Everybody.
So I'm going to let them a couple of days. And then
So at this time, I'll call the meeting to order.
she needs to be louder.
So we'll call this workshop meeting to order. And 2.1 would be any changes to the agenda and approval of that agenda. And my fellow board members, as I go down the agenda items, if you need to stop me, feel free to do that. So 3.1, we'll move into 3 recognitions, and we do have 3 recognitions on Monday night. And I would like to stop and just say that it's my honor to sit in for Tim Bryant, our chairman, who is attending the FSBA conference along with Superintendent Chambers, as they're having the joint superintendent's meeting and the school board meeting at the same time. And we wish them safe travels, and we hope they learn a lot that they can come back and share with us. So on Section 3, recognitions, 3.1 is the saddest of all things, the recognition of the retirement of Rita Scallon, and that will be presented by Superintendent Chambers. 3.2, recognition of the retirement of Dennis Samack, presented by Superintendent Chambers. 3.3, recognition of the 2020-21 Kids Tag Art Program winners, presented by Mr. Ben Anderson, our Okaloosa County Tax Collector. At this time, on Section 4, we do not know of visitors we might have on Monday evening. We'll know that when we get to that juncture. And Section 5, Administrative Personnel Appointments. 5.1, Appointment of Director 1, Operational Services, recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 5.2, Appointment of Athletic Director, Choctawhatchee High School, recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 5.3, Appointment of Assistant Principal 1, 12-month, Choctawhatchee High School, recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 5.4, Appointment of Assistant Principal 2, 10-month, Shalimar Elementary School, recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 5.5, Appointment of Assistant Principal 2, 10-month, Elliott Point Elementary School, recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 6.1, again, that would be public comment. And we don't know at this junction what input or what people might want to come forward. We'll know that Monday night. And Section 7, Committee and Staff Reports, Workshop only. 7.1, In-County Travel for the period of May 6th through 26th, presented by Rita Scallon, our CFO. 7.2, Out-of-County Travel paid for the period of May 6th through 26th, presented by Rita Scallon, CFO. Consent agenda. Section 8. 8.1 would be approval of that consent agenda, and board members, as I call each item, if you have a comment or question, feel free to jump in. 8.2 is approval of the minutes of the student disciplinary hearing of May 20th, minutes of the workshop meeting of May 20th, minutes of the regular meeting of May 24th, all recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.3, appropriation of District 2 School Board Member Capital Outlay Funds to Fort Walton Beach High School for projectors in the amount of $3,580, presented by Ms. Gardner and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.4, appropriation of District 2 School Board Capital Outlay Funds to Silver Sand School for classroom flooring in the amount of $2,573.95, presented by Mrs. Gardner and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.5, appropriation of District 2 School Board Capital Outlay Funds to Silver Sands for flooring for main offices in the amount of $3,863.76, 76 cents, presented by Ms. Gardner and recommended for approval. 8.6, appropriation of District 2 School Board Capital Outlay Funds to Bruner Middle School for corridor lockers in the amount of $12,758, presented by Ms. Gardner and recommended for approval. 8.7, appropriation of District 3 School Board Member Capital Outlay Funds to Florosa Elementary School for portable storage building in the amount of $9,640, presented by Ms. Evanchik and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.8, appropriation of District 4 School Board Member Capital Outlay Funds to Davidson Middle School for robotics team equipment in the amount of $2,867.83, presented by Mr. Bryant and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.9, request to advertise a public hearing for adoption of revised school board policy 01-29, public health emergencies, presented and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.10, Budget Amendment Number 8, Fiscal Year 2020-2021, presented by Rita Scallon, CFO, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.11, Monthly Financial Statements for April 2021, presented by Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.12, Invoices to be approved for payment, presented by Rita Scallon, CFO, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.13, School Donations, presented by Ms. Scallon, CFO, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.14, Revised Administrative Salary Schedule for Fiscal Year 2020-2021, presented by Ms. Scallon, CFO, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.15, Request to close the current Choctawhatchee High School internal funds checking account at United Fidelity Bank and open a new account at Service First Bank effective June 15, 2021, presented by Rita Scallon, CFO, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.16, Agreement for Consultant Services with Miller Educational Consultants, Inc., doing business as Teaching Learning Solutions, presented by Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.17, Amended Renewal of ITB 17-07, New and Recapped Tire Services, presented by Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.18, Renewal of ITB 18-17, Session Initiated Protocol, SIP, Trunk and Transport, presented by Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.19, Renewal of ITB 18-21, Tile Carpeting and Tile Flooring, District-wide, presented by Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.20, Renewal of Tag-on Bid Annual Purchase Agreement for Indefinite Quantity Environmental Contracting Services, presented by Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.21, Tag-on Bid Purchasing over $25,000, ITB 21-968-173, Bleacher Repair and Motorization, presented by Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.22, Tag-on Bid Purchase over $25,000, WTI, presented by Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.23, Tag-on Bid Purchase over $25,000, Howard Technology Solutions, presented by Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.24, Multi-Year Exceptional Purchase, Exempted Purchase over $25,000, Edgenuity, presented by Vince Wyndham, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.25, Exempted Purchase over $25,000, Heartland School Solutions, presented by Vince Wyndham, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.26, Exempted Purchase over $25,000, Apply Networks, presented by Vince Wyndham, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.27, Exempted Purchase over $25,000, Raptor Technologies, presented by Vince Wyndham, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.28, Exempted Purchase over $25,000, Curriculum Associates, presented by Vince Wyndham, and recommended for approval. 8.29, Exempted Purchase over $25,000, Study Edge, presented by Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.30, Exempted Purchase over $25,000, Konya Incorporated, presented by Vince Wyndham, Program Director, Purchasing, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.31, Exempted Purchase over $25,000, Instructure, presented by Vince Wyndham, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.32, Amendment to Service Agreement Number 21-7, David Bricker, presented by Vince Wyndham, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.33, Service Agreement Number 22-01, Darren Wong Training, LLC, presented by Vince Wyndham and recommended by the superintendent for approval. 8.34, RFP for employee benefits brokerage and consulting services, presented by Russ Frakes, Specialist Risk Management, and recommended by the superintendent for approval.
I'd like to make a comment, please, on that.
Yes, Ms. Evangelist.
I want to thank Mr. Frakes and the Benefits Oversight Group for, I know they've worked a lot this year and met many, many times. Insurance is a challenging thing, you know, in the world, just and certainly for us. But and I have spoken out of concerns over the past. So thank you so much for looking into this, and I look forward to you bringing to the board the information that you find through this search and everything. So thanks, Russ, and your group.
Thank you, Ms. Evangelist. Anyone else? I concur. Thank you, Russ, for doing that. All right, 8.35, surplus, salvage, and disposal of school buses in order to receive DARA grant rebate, presented by Jay McGinnis, Program Director, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.36, sale and disposal of surplus property, presented by Steve Bolton, Program Director, Maintenance, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.37, Summer Voluntary Pre-K Program, VPK, for 2021, presented by Deborah Hahn, Principal, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.38, Child Welfare Collaboration Procedures between the School District of Okaloosa County and the Department of Children and Families, Families First Network, and Guardian Ad Litem Program, presented by Terry Schroeder, Program Director, Student Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.39, Educational Services Agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County and Okaloosa Academy, Inc. to provide services placed with the Department of Juvenile Justice in Okaloosa County, presented by Terry Schroeder, Program Director, Student Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.40, Memorandum of Understanding between the School Board of Okaloosa County and North Florida Medical Centers, Inc., presented by Terry Schroeder, Program Director, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.41, Cooperative Agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County and Children's Home Society to provide in-school mental health services to students with parent consent, presented by Terry Schroeder, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.42, Cooperative Agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County and the Early Learning Coalition of the Emerald Coast for child care services provided by the Teenage Parent Program, presented by Terry Schroeder, Program Director, Student Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.43, Curriculum and Instruction Course Adoptions for the 2021-2022 school year, presented by Denise Berry, Specialist, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
I do have a question about that. I'm sorry. I don't see Ms. Berry, maybe Ms. Lightborn. Oh, okay, sure. Of course. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get with her, but having been a past, English teacher, on this intensive reading, it says, it shows that they're still doing 1, 2, 3, 4. And so she said they had, well, the way she put it, they daggered it. But
That's the term.
How DOE
Yeah.
uses the
Yeah.
terminology.
Right.
The course numbers that were originally there were daggered, which means they go away.
Right.
And these are just the new course numbers.
so it's just the
replacing.
numbers, it's not, the course itself is.
Well, remember, we're going to the best standards, so
Right,
that
so
those will have best standards
they've gotten those in that.
connected.
Okay, all right. But essentially, we're offering the same things
Yes,
to the
ma'am.
student, just adapting it to the new best standards, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
In line with DOE's new course numbers.
And the criteria for students to take the course are the same
Same.
as before?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you,
Yep,
appreciate
you're
that
welcome.
clarification.
Anyone else? All right, and that brings us to 8:44. Crestview High School course adoptions for the 2021-2022 school year, presented by Denise Berry, Specialist, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Any comments, colleagues, on Section 8? Okay. That brings us to Section 9, Superintendent's Human Resources Recommendations. 9.1, Employees on Administrative Leave, presented by Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources. 9.2, Deferred Retirement Option Program, DROP, presented by Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources. 9.3, employee separations, presented by Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.4, instructional and educational support personnel recommendations for the 2021-2022 school year. 9.5, administrative, managerial, and professional technical personnel recommendations for the 2021-2022 school year. 9.6, personnel recommendations presented by Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.7, employee transfers presented by Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.8, employee suspension presented by Lee Hale and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.9, reinstatement, reimbursement of sick leave due to line of duty illness, injury, or medical examination presented by Lee Hale and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 9.9, leave without pay presented by Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Any comments on Section 9? Mr. Horton, do you have anything to add?
Not at this time, thanks.
Okay, 10 brings us to any discussion items that would be moved potentially from the consent agenda, and at this time we don't know of those. 11 would be the construction program owners, business representatives items, and we will have a meeting Monday morning, so there should be items to bring before you Monday night. 11.2 would be Program 6, Task Order 13, Time and Materials to develop a master plan for the consolidation district services at the Central Administrative Complex here, presented by Dr. Bill Smith and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
And just a question, Madam Chair. I appreciated the conversation that I had with Dr. Smith regarding this particular item, and I'm wondering if Mr. Horton, if Dr. Smith might speak to us for a moment about this.
Certainly.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you. This is an opportunity for us to develop a long-range plan for this facility and a space allocation plan to make sure people fit and where they'll go. So at some point in time in the future, when we decide to start doing something here, we can do it in a planned, organized manner to not go back and redo spaces that we've already done. We've done something very similar to this in the past at Fort Walton Beach High School with an air conditioning project where we didn't have all the funding at one time. And we made great progress over about a 5 or 6 year period, and we were very successful. This is the first step of that process.
All right, Dr. Smith, and so should the board approve this and should we go forward, the thing that I know that we and the citizens and taxpayers are always concerned about would be the source of funding for such a project. How would we fund something like this?
Well, I'll defer the funding sources to Ms. Scallon, but we're not allowed to use sales tax money. We're not allowed to use capital money unless we have met all our student station needs.
There you go.
And I'll let her address anything else pertaining to that.
So this would not be the half-cent sales tax money, and this wouldn't be, what else, Ms. Scallon?
It's not the half-cent sales tax money, and it is not 2 mil money, which is generated from property taxes.
Okay.
This money will come from LCIF, and that is a fund source that accumulates some money over a period of years if we sell any kind of equipment or land. And what we have in there to cover the this item is an accumulation over a number of years of residual money. So
right.
It is not taxpayer money per se.
And I very much appreciate that clarification, and I think our citizens and constituents will also appreciate knowing that this will not be, should we do this, that this will not be taxpayer funded. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Smith.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Yes. If we approve going ahead with getting this master plan and paying for that to be done, when do you anticipate we would be able to see that plan?
It will be a process by which the architectural firm that's employed to develop this plan for us will conduct meetings and take input from staff and And I've already given Jacobs Titan our employee list and who's in each department so they can get some idea of the numbers and where they would go. You're talking a couple of months probably before we can see some draft stuff, but it will be a very long process of getting the final document.
And then ultimately, this plan, I heard you mention that it would be a phased plan, correct? Obviously, we can't do everything at one time, one, because of finances, and two, just we're occupying the facility that we're trying to redo, and so you can only do so much.
The best example I have is what we did at Fort Walton Beach. We got the master plan of the whole scope of work, and then we realized we had this much money to put toward it, and we developed a phase one that fit that amount of money. And then when we got some more money that was appropriate for that funding, we did a phase two. So you can kind of, as you approve the phases, you can control that destiny.
And so in the plan, it would maybe tell us what would be a priority or what needs to happen first and
That's
then
correct.
second and all that,
Yeah,
okay?
I'll give you a good example of back to the Fort Walton Beach issue. Our worst problem was in the front office and the administrative, and that's where we started first.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I have a quick question. Okay, this is a 5-year plan? Are we
Not really a 5-year plan. It's the beginning of a plan depending on how fast the board decides to go through these phases.
Okay, and as we go along, if we see changes need to be made, adjustments, that's all, we can always take that into consideration and we can make those.
Absolutely. And what
Changes.
usually happens there as we bite off a chunk into a phase, this is phase one or phase two, you drill down and you have another opportunity to make changes at that point in time, as you do the phases.
As need comes along.
Yes, because that's going to change over time.
This has been really needed, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Dr. White. And I'll just add on to that one of my main purposes for tossing this out at this point in time is that I've had offices in all 3 of our administrative complexes, Carver Hill, Lowry Place, and now this one. And all 3 of them suffered from what I call the patchwork quilt syndrome, where every time somebody needed an office, well, we'll just go down here and whack off part of somebody else's and make a little cubby hole for this new employee, or we'll just add on to the back, or we'll just find a cubby hole out back in a storage room for someone. And it's just not thoughtfully done. So my emphasis was, let's take an opportunity to do something thoughtfully into the future that could serve us now and be thoughtfully done for the future. So thank you for that information, and thank you for your question, Dr. White.
And also, Dr. Kelly, the other goal is, as you said, we are still actually running 3 different sites, although at Lowry Place, it's only partially occupied, the main building is not, but still it makes it less efficient when we don't have most of our employees together to get, things done.
Right.
And
we're also at a juncture in society where we have to consider the safety of employees now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And should we be able to do, as Ms. Vanchek is suggesting, there will also be some cost savings associated with perhaps reducing the other facilities.
Exactly. You think
Right.
about utilities
Trying to keep it
and
up.
custodial and all of those other things, maintenance type things that have to happen. Thank you for that. So at this time, that moves us into 12, Information Technology Seat Management Contract. 12.1, that item is the CACI Task Order Number 2-178 for Niceville High School for data drops, presented by Justin Keith, Specialist Seat Management, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Any comments there? All right, that brings us into item 13, Attorney's Business.
No report this morning.
Thank you. And 14, Mr. Horton, sitting in for Superintendent Chambers. You have any comments?
Just a couple on
Okay.
his behalf, and thank you, Dr. Kelly. This was I'm going to have to very smoothly run meeting, and I appreciate all the support staff contacting board members and keeping them up to speed on what's happening. Just to pass along, obviously, yesterday was our last day of school, and so, and Mr. Chambers wanted me to pass along, obviously, from pre-kindergarten through our graduating seniors. The students have been very resilient this year and done a fantastic job. Our teachers, our classroom assistants, custodial, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, district staff are heroes, plain and simple, for the way they've come through this year. And I think it's fair to say that our schools, Okaloosa schools, will be even stronger next year based on the challenges we've faced together and overcome this year. So I know on his behalf, he's very proud of what everyone's accomplished this year. And while nothing's perfect, just very, very happy that we've reached the end of the school year. A couple other quick things of note related to graduation at the end of the year. You know, we do our live streaming at all of our high school locations, including Richburg and Silver Sands. We had a total of 15,026 views. And then we also look at concurrent views. So at any given moment in time, what's the highest number of viewership? And at the high schools, the 9 through 12 high schools, it was over 300 viewers at any moment in time. And Crestview took first place this year with 484 concurrent viewers at one time. But great turnout, and that's a shout out to that IT staff with Eric Mitchell and those folks who set up, practice, and then attend those graduation ceremonies and do a great job with those. Since Mr. McGinnis is here, I want to give him a quick plug. We've got a total of 20 school buses now on site. And as you know, when they come in, they've got to get prepped with cameras and other pieces, but we hope to get some of those out in circulation even for summer school. But the remaining 20 should be coming in the next few weeks. So we'll have a great start to the school year, just keeping parents updated on that. And then finally, I wanted to make sure the board was aware. Last week, Mr. Chambers and I had the honor of going to the Board of County Commissioners meeting. At that time, the Board of County Commissioners unanimously approved a resolution supporting our Triumph grant application. As we've mentioned before, we've had several meetings and they've all been very successful with the Triumph Group. We're working on our term sheet right now, and as I mentioned before, we'll be bringing back an item for you to consider at some point, possibly in July, related to that $2.84 million Triumph grant for artificial intelligence and machine learning institutes that are going to produce industry certifications for students at a whole nother level, in addition to what we're already doing with our CTE program. So
That's cool.
very excited about that.
That is exciting.
Sounds good.
And that's it for me.
Thank you. And I need to go back up and catch 14.1, which was our out-of-state student field trip request. So that brings us to item 15, board members' announcements and requests for information. And so we will have 15.1. I know Mr. Bryant had alluded to this last time, the designation of school board members to serve as the advocacy representative to the School Boards Association, and I think he will have some things to say on Monday night about that. That brings us to 15.2, board members' announcements and requests for information. I'll start with Ms. Gardner.
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Evanchik?
Well, yes, I just want to follow up on graduation. It was nice because we have when Richburg School and Silver Sand School board members get to go and we get to be together, and it's rare out of a meeting setting that we can actually attend something. It was such a pleasure to be able to see those students celebrate, their parents celebrate in person, and for all of us to get to be there. And it was very enjoyable being with those, with my fellow board members and the superintendent and some of his staff to do that. And then then we of course split because we all have graduations in different locations. We can't be at all, and so I do have to put, you know, how I'm always plugging my Baker group. Well, we got up there, and I gotta give them a shout out. I had the pleasure of attending the Baker graduation this year with Miss Lightbourne and Mr. Bryant, and I tell you, they treated us well. They had a fan at our seat, electric fan for us to sit, and on stage. But the whole big ending was once the principal, Mr. Martello, had conferred the graduates, he asked us to stay there, which we did, of course, and we were trying to be at, you know, our best professionalism. And suddenly in the field at the end, fireworks, I'm talking professional show fireworks, came up.
Pretty cool.
And the 5-year-old Lindy Vanchek kind of came out, and I lost my professionalism. I think I kind of even embarrassed Miss Lightbourne and Mr. Bryant because I was squealing and hollering and all that because I was so excited. I'm a fireworks fan, but also, in all seriousness, I really thought, what a great way to say, there you go, pandemic year. We got it. We got this. We get to celebrate anyway. So it was pretty exciting there at Baker, and I appreciate Mr. Martello and his administration, everybody there really treating us very well up there at Baker. One more thing I wanted to mention was the other day we got an email from Dr. Karen Chapman with the Department of Health indicating that would be her last submission of metrics on COVID. And nothing against her, but that was nice to see that we don't have to get that report anymore from her and the Department of Health, which shows us we have moved on to better things. So I certainly appreciate Dr. Chapman and her cooperation with the school district this year and keeping us informed and trying to keep everybody safe. Thank you.
Hey, Dr. White?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, just to share a couple of things. I know the board members are aware that at this very moment, the State Board of Education is meeting in Tallahassee regarding rules for the teaching of patriotism and unifying principles. And I just wanted to share and let you know that I intend to bring forward some policy recommendations for the superintendent and this board's consideration regarding that matter. And then finally, happily, on Monday night, I'll be making some supporting motions in favor of the superintendent's recommendations. And that's
Good to
all.
know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. White. And I just have a couple of announcements. One, I'm sure we all read in the paper or on your Facebook notices, congratulations to a student from a family we've heard a lot of, Daniel Orcutt of Fort Walton Beach High School, for qualifying for the U.S. Olympic swim trials.
That's awesome.
So that is awesome. And then, of course, as every year, we have Youth Week with the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department coming up this summer. It's June the 14th through the 18th at 3 of our middle schools, Ruckle, Bruner, and Shoal River, from 8 to noon. And students who are interested should see their school's SRO to sign up. And then Sinfonio Gulf Coast is offering a beginning string orchestra summer camp, and that also starts Monday, June the 14th, and runs through the 25th at the Destin Community Center. And that's all that I have. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order? Anybody in the audience? Mr. McGinnis? Anyone else? All right, well then it is my pleasure to adjourn the meeting.